Welcome to Demystify Magic with Molly and Madison.
I'm Molly, a former skeptic turned full-time energy healer and teacher.
And I'm Madison, a born and raised witch running my family's crystal shop.
And we're here to explore all things woo through the lens of both science and spirituality so that you can find the moments of magic in your everyday life and create an intentional spiritual practice.
So if that's what you're into, find a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's demystify some magic.
Howdy doody.
Howdy doody, bestie.
I feel like I just saw you in the flesh.
I know. What a fun time.
I'm sure we'll talk all about it.
Yeah, the first Zoom after we see each other in person is always so both so exciting and also so disappointing.
I know.
I'm like, oh, we're hanging out again. And then I'm like, oh, we were hanging out across the table at a restaurant from each other a week ago.
For 12 hours. Yeah. I mean, not at the restaurant for 12 hours. Could you imagine?
We just decided to eat all 3 meals at the same restaurant.
Dude, okay, aside before we dive in, I watched a TikTok last night of someone who spent 16 hours in a Golden Corral. And now it's my life's mission to do something like that. So
absolutely not. No, thank you.
Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today we're doing a little spin-off episode because, if you've been listening to the pod for a while, we have our low effort rituals series. And we've gotten a lot of requests over the last week or two on talking about how to connect with spirit guides. And as we were creating this, we're like, oh, we should do in low effort rituals. But then as we made our list, we're like, these aren't really rituals. They're more low pressure ways to connect. And so welcome to our new low pressure series, I guess. And if you like it, we'll keep doing them.
Yeah, I think that this is an important way to tackle this because the idea of connecting to a spirit guide. Hold on, I'm so sorry. There's a hair in my eye. Okay, we're good. Anyways.
Is it a cat hair or a Madison hair?
It was my own hair still attached to my head. Anyways, don't know how that happened. We've done the thing again where we didn't piddle before we press record because you guys really are loving the pendulum episode where we just dove straight in. So I hope you still like it. Anyways, the idea of connecting with your spirit guides feels really intense and something that needs it. There feels like there's a lot of weight to that statement, and that can be true. And I think that there is, in a way, just different than you think. And just because something holds a lot of weight doesn't mean that it has to be hard or scary or difficult. So I'm excited for this new spin-off series.
Yay! But first, Madison, what was your magic moment of the week?
I picked a really tough time last week to say that I wasn't going to get sappy on the pod anymore because I did do that.
I know, I thought that too.
I did do that right before Spellcrafter had its soft opening. And that was not a good time to say that I was not going to be emotional here because Spellcrafter had its soft opening last weekend and it was the most magical moment of my whole dang life. Truly, we were busy all day and it was busy all day because of people who listen to this podcast. I don't think there were maybe 3 or 4 people who didn't know me personally, from, my grandma came, people who weren't related to me and love me in my personal life, maybe 3 or 4 of them, just strangers who came in off the street. Who came in that day. It was all people who I know or people who listen to this podcast who now I feel like I know. And you were there. It was just the most wonderful experience of first of all, if you don't know the geography of Florida, I live in the Tampa Bay area. Molly, when she comes to Florida, stays in the Ocala area. And that's a 2-hour drive. So Molly stays in the Ocala area, drives 2 hours to meet me at 9 a.m. for us to open at noon. There's nothing in the building. It's truly an empty building. And from the hours of 9 to 12, Molly is merchandising. Molly is putting together displays. Molly is unpacking product. Molly is texting my boyfriend to bring me breakfast. And it's just such a lovely experience that I will never, never, ever take for granted to have so many people in my life who care so much about the things that I care about to do this for me. You fucking flew from Maine to hang out with me for 12 hours, but really hanging out with me was working. Molly learned how to use our point of sale system. And like, I just love you and I'm so grateful for you. And there's just a lot of magic moments in there. So that whole day was 100,000 magic moments that I could do a whole podcast episode about. But thank you. I love you.
Same. Love you. Yeah, that was such a fun day. It was so wild, like, because we got to meet all these people that listen to the pod and like DM us all the time.
People brought us presents.
Like I remember like Annie, specifically Annie, what's up? Love you.
Hi Annie,
walked
love
in
you.
with these with these flowers, and I'm sitting on the floor with Drew just like kicking it while you're doing your like your thing in the store. And Annie just hands me flowers and I'm like, what is this for? It's not my opening. It was so nice. And then I had to find a way to bring the bouquet home with me on the plane.
How did you do that, by the way? We never discussed this.
So I'm very grateful. My dad is an engineer. So we were figuring it out. So
we were making it happen.
So I left it in the plastic sleeve that it comes in. And then I wrapped a wet paper towel with 2 rubber bands. And then I took the sleeve that his newspaper comes in and put it around that and rubber banded that around it.
Perfect.
And then I put it hanging out of my purse.
That is so tender. I love that.
So thank you everyone who came to see us. My magic moment is a part of this magic moment. And it is that so when I came down in January, I jokingly said to Madison, this was like a couple weeks before Reiki training opened, and I had no idea, as you can recall, I had no idea it was gonna fill so quickly. And so I jokingly said to Madison, when I come down for Spellcrafters opening, I'm flying first class, baby. Because I'm someone that I fly the cheapest flight always. Like I'm someone that I normally don't even have a carry-on. I'm just personal item in the back, like weird 5-hour layovers or like leaving my house at 3 a.m. Like I'm that traveler. Like I know we've talked about how I just recently learned you could purchase Wi-Fi on the plane. It's because I was always taught you don't buy anything on the plane. You fly as cheap as possible and you like it. So I treated myself to a first class ticket down to Florida and a time slot that was not, a time slot that was not inconvenient for me. It was very difficult for me to like get myself to do that. But I was like, no, it's almost my birthday. I've had a really good month. I want to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for the Spellcrafter opening. And you know what's so funny is I had a 45-minute layover between my first flight and my second flight. And it was one of those tiny planes, the first flight, that you had to valet check your bag. And we got there 15 minutes late. And so because I was in first class, I was the first person off the plane. My bag was the first bag out. And I walked all the way to my gate and walked directly on the plane. Like had I not been in first class, I would not have made my next flight. And so I was like, well, justified. Yep.
There we
so
go.
That's my magic moment is I got to feel like a movie star on the plane. And then I got to feel like a movie star because people were bringing me flowers and it wasn't even my day. And then I got to hang out with my bestie and got to see my dad. And it was a great weekend.
It was the best. I'm so happy you came. We were like getting ready to say goodbye, like hugging. We were outside your rental car, like planning like your next trip to Florida. We were like, okay, so we're going to do this again this time. And we're going to go to Disney World. I swear we're going to go to Disney.
Disney World.
Well,
now that we have connections, now that we've met Christine and Danny who listen to the podcast, who work there, we have to go to Disney World.
Now it's a write-off. It's a business trip.
It's a write-off. You just read it off. Should we dive in?
Let's dive in. Let's do it.
Okay. Do you want to go first? Yours is first on the list.
Yeah, and mine is first and also the easiest, in my opinion. Well, it is the easiest in theory, and in my experience, the most difficult in practice. The biggest thing that I've noticed for me in my life, like in my spiritual practice period, is that my life is so loud. There are so many opportunities for me to create, like to remove silence. You know, like if I'm making dinner, I have a podcast playing. When I'm on the toilet, I'm watching TikTok. Even like up until like the moments before I fall asleep, like I'm listening to music or whatever it is. Like there is no opportunity for quiet time. I like, not there's no opportunity, I remove all opportunity. And it is only in these very rare moments of quiet that I have experienced like true connection that has been like mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first line of defense, my first piece of advice is to create space. Because imagine being a spirit guide, being an ancestor, being on the other side. Imagine trying to talk to someone who is like constantly interrupting you, you know, even in real life. Like imagine you're trying to talk to someone and they're just yelling all the time. Like you can't get a word in edgewise.
Mm-hmm.
And so becoming more comfortable with quiet has been a big thing for me recently. You know, I've started even like driving with no music on, which is very unlike me. You know, I'll take the first like 5-10 minutes of a drive and just sit with my thoughts, which I know can be like a really difficult thing to do, especially when you're not used to it. But that is like the magic really is in those spaces between moments.
Yeah. I am someone that also struggles with finding quiet. I'm laughing because I'm like, oh, I literally was just like downstairs in my kitchen, and like in the off times that I wasn't filming videos about simmer pots, I'm listening to a book about an astronaut, and my washer is going and my dishwasher is going and the dogs are wooing and it's just chaos. And I'm like, why is it so quiet? But something that helped me, especially when I was first getting used to this idea of creating space and quiet, is almost like having someone help me create that space and quiet. So for me, going to a yoga class would really help me, because then in the last couple of minutes of quiet in Shavasana, I would connect with my guides. Or it would be easier for me not to turn the radio on when I left the yoga class or when I left a Reiki session or whatever. Like finding a practice or a community or some sort of event that helps you settle into that quiet can be a nice way to get used to it in a more like comfortable environment, because for some of us, just sitting in quiet with our thoughts is like agonizing, but we can ease into it with like a group being guided through it. Sometimes I'll do like a guided meditation and then I'll just have a few minutes of quiet on the other side of it. So doing something like that can help you if you're like, the idea of turning my podcast off feels awful, and you should definitely not turn this podcast off.
Yeah, when I say create quiet, I mean in the next 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
After you've completed
After
this
you
episode.
listen.
Yeah. You know, okay, I just recovered a memory as you were talking about going to a yoga class. Like, this is a sidebar and I'm so sorry. And we might have to cut this out, but I just have to tell you because it's very funny to me. When I was in high school, I went to this yoga studio that also did like guided meditations, like hour-long guided meditations. And this was my first, I think, like exposure to a meditation. Was at this yoga studio, and it was like at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I remember going like before high school, and never having experienced anything like this. Molly, I fell asleep in the class.
Oh my God. You know what's so funny is so when I went to boarding school for high school, and we had like non-traditional PE, and yoga was one of the options, and it was at 6 a.m. on Thursdays. And I also would fall asleep.
And I think about it now, like, and I remember I would like leave and go to school and be like, wow, that was great. Like, meditation is sick. I feel so good. And I'm like, bitch, you were sleeping for 60 minutes. Like, you got an extra hour of sleep. You could have just stayed home and in bed. Like, you just drove somewhere for 15 minutes to go lay back down in your school clothes.
The dream, honestly. Like, that's the dream.
It was so funny. So create quiet, but maybe not too much peace and quiet.
Okay, the next one we have is to ask your guides for specific signs. And I'm going to put a big old asterisk on here, because whenever we hear that, we tend to go for like life-altering signs, like, should I leave this relationship? Should I change my job? Should I move across the country? No, I want you to ask for like stupid signs. Like, I want you to ask for signs like, should I have pizza for lunch? Or should I have chicken tenders? You know, should I go to bed an hour earlier? Should I wear the red shirt today? And ask for specific signs. So I tend to, when I'm working with my guides, I work with butterflies and dragonflies, because that's the signs that they tend to show to me. So I'll say like, if I should eat pizza for lunch, show me a butterfly. And if I should eat something else for lunch, show me a dragonfly. And then I just keep my eyes open. And you might see this. It's so funny. I just looked over in the book on my desk. It has a big old butterfly on it. Someone's having diarrhea later. Pizza hurts my tummy.
Aww, tender.
Yeah, I know. Rough. It's a rough life for me, but Grandma said so. So I guess it's happening.
I'm sorry, what?
She says, live a little, girl.
Oh, yeah. Gluten and cheese, tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think even like taking it down to even a more base level, like you can ask for a sign, like show me a dragonfly when you're around. You know, show me that you're around when I see or smell or experience this, you know, like that can be even like a more day-to-day, like just set the expectation of like, oh, can you show me a turtle when you're nearby? And that kind of creates like this sense of security and safety and like comfort of like, oh, this person, this entity, this like spirit is around so much more than I ever would have thought. And that creates a level of familiarity that makes it easier to ask those like life-altering questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say like if you were meeting someone for the first time, you wouldn't ask them life-altering questions. So don't expect that of your guides. Because even if you met someone in the airport and were like, should I move across the country? No matter what answer they say, you're not going to believe them because you're like, what does this person know about me? So it's like get to know your guides like you would another human. Like ask them about themselves, you know, ask them questions about like, how do you support me? Or can you support me with this or whatever? Like get to know them rather than just diving into the deep end, just like you would with any person.
And then I think that's a really great segue into our next one is go into this with like a level of curiosity rather than clear-cut expectations. You know, ask open-ended questions and be open to how you receive the answer. Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of different ways you can start connecting with your guides. You could literally, like sometimes I will just talk out loud, like in my car, in the shower, while I'm making a simmer pot, whatever. Just talk out loud. Sometimes the answers will come to you as signs. Sometimes they'll just come to you as like knowings. Right? Sometimes they'll come to you as dreams, just like we talked about in our intuition series, all those different ways, the clairs that intuition can come through to you, signs from your guides can come through to you. So you could ask questions out loud. You could ask questions in meditation. You could ask questions while you're doing pulling cards for yourself. Really, there's no right or wrong here, but just being open to the answer and how it comes to you. And it's almost like, you know how people say the best way to communicate is to listen to the person rather than just waiting to respond or planning your response? I think it's the same when working with your guides too.
Oh, I love that comparison because it's communication just like you and I are communicating. It's just with a different kind of response. And so coming at it from that perspective, I think, is a way that really humanizes the experience.
Yeah. And I also think that opens it up to more magic too. Like some of the best experiences I've had with my guides, I'm like, wow, I would have never expected a spirit guide to say that to me. Like sometimes my guides are real sassy. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I need right now. Someone to sass me, you know, but then it's like, oh, okay. For me, I tend to trust that more because I'm like, that did not come from my brain. That is like someone else's personality. Next option you have is meditation. And again, big old asterisk on this because as we've talked about on the pod before, anything can be meditation. You can meditate while you're washing the dishes. You can meditate while you're walking your dog. You can meditate while you're painting your toenails. You can meditate while you're folding your laundry. You can meditate while you're doing anything. But meditation is simply like it's a practice of coming into that curiosity, being curious about what's happening, what information you're receiving from your body, from your environment, from your mind, without trying to control it or change it in any way. And when we start to practice that awareness, then we start to pick up more on the information that our spirit guides are trying to give us, because it's often, I find, subtle more than it is like in your face. Like I would have not noticed that butterfly on the book had I not been looking for it, been open to it. I look at this book almost every day, and this is the first time I've noticed the butterfly.
Yeah. And I think this is where I really feel like I've talked in the past about how like creative endeavors are really meditative for me. I really, really suggest creative meditations like crafting. Mm-hmm. Using that part of my brain, it feels like there is like a high-speed train from the creative part of my brain to my intuition. And so if you are someone who needs to active meditate, like get a coloring book.
Yeah.
Buy some, air dry clay. Ceramics for me, ceramics and stained glass are the two things that I feel like you're using your hands in a way that you have to, like the only place to live is in your brain. Mm-hmm. And so you can't be easily distracted by the things that are down here.
Yeah.
And I will be truly like crafting, having full blown conversations. Like that is where I really can feel like,
yeah,
oh, you're really here with me. Mm-hmm. And, it's going back to that creating space. It's, pulling out the seat next to you mm-hmm. for someone to sit down.
Speaking of crafting, can I tell you a practice that I did a couple weeks ago that really helped me connect with my guides?
Please.
So I think this was right around when we did our spell jar episode. So if you haven't listened to that, this is a good one to queue up after. But I made a spell jar for one of my guides, and I basically set out all of the ingredients that I had to work with and let them guide me to what I should choose. So they guided me towards like the different flower petals and the different crystals and the candle color and all of that. And it was like this very cool, like trust the process co-creation situation. And then I stuck that on my altar. And every time I want to connect with them, I just give it a little shaky shake. And it was so fun. So that could be that could be a cute way to connect with them.
Witchcrafting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It was just cute and fun. I was like, I want to make a spell jar today.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a crafting spellwork crossover episode.
Hey, you heard it here first. And that's a perfect segue into our fifth and final option.
Yes. Making a little offering for a guide or an ancestor on your altar is a really like, if you're a more physical, like tactile person, having something in like something that you can touch and like use to signify, okay, like this is me opening a door. This is me, like this is how I let you know that I'm ready. I'm ready to talk. I want to get to know you. Mm-hmm. It creates like a mental association as well that I think makes it easier to create that space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've talked about offerings before, haven't we? I think in the altars episode.
There's no way that we haven't with the whole, grandpa cigarettes
right.
saga that we went on that we didn't talk.
Yeah.
I still get people who message me about my grandpa and his cigarettes on my altar. The other day, I actually had to hide them because my landlord sent out an email that they were doing checks, whatever, making sure I haven't punched a hole in the wall or anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want them to think that I smoke inside. So I shoved them in a drawer. Of all the things in this house, it's I have to hide my grandpa's cigarettes because I'm not losing my security deposit over them assuming that I'm smoking in their house.
Can you imagine trying to explain to them? No, I don't smoke. It's for my dead grandfather.
No, I can't imagine. And they're so perfectly placed next to a tray covered in incense ash, literally next to an ashtray. That they look like they're perfectly placed for me to pick up and, have my little cigarette while I sit on the couch, which is obviously not what is occurring.
It's amazing.
But I was like, oh, some people are putting, hanging pictures over their holes in the walls, and I'm hiding grandpa's cigarettes.
Oh, God. So anyways, that's an example of an offering. I use a candle sometimes. I just light a little candle, and that's my little hello, come on in, turning the front porch light on.
I love that analogy. Sorry. I didn't mean to derail again.
No, it
was just so funny
perfect.
to me.
if anyone hasn't heard that saga, you need to just start from the beginning of the podcast, work your way through.
Yeah. I don't even know where it is. It's just sprinkled throughout our discography.
So yeah, it's a part of the Demystify Magic lore at this point.
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, we want to hear from you and your favorite way to connect with your spirit guides. Let us know if this was helpful. If you have more questions about spirit guides, know that we always have that feedback form down in the show notes, and you can always DM us at Demystify Magic over on the Instagram.
Yeah, and let us know what niche thing you're leaving for your spirit guides and ancestors. I want to know. Is there a brand of cigarettes that your grandpa needs? Hit me up. I'm curious.
I leave dog whiskers for mine on my altar.
That's
sometimes.
Tender. Cute. I love that.
Just Woody's. Herc doesn't drop his whiskers.
He's holding on to them things.
I know. Woody has one gray whisker, and I'm just waiting for it to drop. I'm just like, give it to me.
Walking around with your hands under his little chin.
Look at him look at me.
He's like, women only care about one thing, and it's whiskers.
And on that note, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Demystify Magic with Molly and Madison. If you want to learn more about us, you can find all our links in the show notes.
We'd love to know what you think of today's episode, so drop us a review or give us a shout out on social media. And don't forget to let us know your magical moment of the week. Okay, love you. Bye.